race war in this country. I mean, I knew it. I mean, like I said, I grew up in an area where, you know, I had, truck farmers lived on both sides of my house. You know, they did really well, those families. But they were, I mean, we're talking 60 years ago. They knew the race war was coming.
Mm-hmm.
They said it's going to happen, and they can't do anything else but happen because my grandchildren are going to want. They said they're going to have everything, but they're going to want what the guy across the street has, because his children were already looking at what the guy across the street had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it didn't make any difference. The guy across the street worked his butt off to get it. They figured, you know, and these guys weren't slaves. These people came here on their own. They were not slaves, folks. They migrated to this country from England, you know, and they were never slaves in England. They were just business people in England. They came over here, so they did not know from slavery. But they look at the people across the street, and they would, you know, well, the guy's got a Rolls Royce, and we've only got, you know, a Stanley steamer.
But they probably worked their butt off for that.
Yeah, their father worked their butt. The fathers worked like my father, they worked their rear ends off so the children could have more, but the children didn't have enough, you know. And then, I mean, I've seen some of the grandchildren. The grandchildren today are the people that are basically the activists. They're wanting that we should be given because of our color.
You know,
but they never were slaves.
It makes me think about where activists come from.
Yeah, they come from rich. I don't think there are poor activists.
Yeah, they usually come from wealthy parents.
They come from, I think, the landed gentry produces many offspring that thinks that everything is evil. Yeah.
And they usually didn't work for it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, look at how, okay, here's the thing that's in common with the riots in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Yemen, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia, in Spain, in Portugal, Greece, France. They're all well-dressed young people.
Mm-hmm.
They're all well-dressed young people. Doesn't that say thing? Well-dressed and young. How do you know if you have nothing? I mean, because I knew the people after the Great Depression, and they didn't have things. I mean, they're like the homeless people that are wandering the streets out here. The homeless are never going to riot. The people that are going to raise up and riot are the people that are basically, their grandparents lived up in Brentwood, and they walk among the homeless because they emphasize with their problems.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they could simply give them the money to get out of being a homeless person. That's not. Wealthy people contribute time, but they do not contribute money generally. So it's their money. But
we see that.
The grandchildren.
Over and over again.
You know, I mean, the grandchildren historically are pains in the asses in the history of the world. It's just, look, all you got to do is go back to, back to Socrates, you know. I fear for the future of our nation when you look at our children today.
Ooh.
And it's historically, it is. Everybody has a quote or something like that, but it's more like the grandchildren. The grandparents build the wealth. The children basically squander the wealth, and the grandchildren want to have more than their parents had, and they don't want to work for it. At least the children had to work.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have wanted to work, but they had to work. The grandchildren don't work. They're the jet setters.
Interesting. So you can kind of tell what generation of where the money came from based on how they're acting.
Yeah, and remember, like I said, the people that are riding in the street generally have money. The people that aren't riding in the street don't have money, because they can't afford to riot.
Yeah, they got to be at work.
You can't afford to miss that day's work because you don't get paid. It's just like in my family, like 1904 we started in the entertainment industry, and my grandmother and my father knew Al Jolson, and they also knew the Cohens, George M. Cohan. George M. Cohan was talking to Al Jolson. Jolson said, I never understood why the show had to go on. Well, Cohen and Jolson were both Jews, and then it became how simple. We don't get paid unless it goes on. And that was a good read. That was an epiphany moment when the light bulb comes on.
The show must go on.
Because you don't get paid if it doesn't. If you don't work, you don't get paid, and if you don't get paid, your wife gets pissed off about you not bringing money to get for the food, folks. It's just like that bling moment, like the women are more likely to buy a television set because of its bling than they are for its value.
No.
Yeah, you be a Muslim male that don't bring your check home because you're out riding and see what your Muslim wife is going to do to your head. The same thing that the same thing an English wife would do, an American wife, a Canadian wife, a Latino wife, an Asian wife. It's go bring me that check home.
Yeah. You gotta pay the bills.
Yeah, and then they say, but where the kids? Oh, I think they're burning the Egyptian of antiquities. Well, okay, but you go to work. That's how it works in this world. So, also, an example, I can walk through neighborhoods that she could never ever go through.
That's definitely true.
Because of my age. The funny thing is that the Latinos, the Afro-Americans, they basically respect age.
They respect the elders.
They respect elders, but their grandchildren don't. Their grandchildren respect nobody, and there's somewhere along the line they've lost the respect. But you can basically, like I got knocked off my bicycle one day and over in a barrio, and we're talking all the older people come running out to see son of a bitch and little bastards, in their cars. That's their grandchildren. He said, we have nothing but trouble. All they do is up all day long, they harass people in the bike lanes. And they're out there making certain that I'm all right. They said, well, we know who they are. Do you want us to call their grandparents? Not their parents. They say, do you want us to call their grandparents? Because the grandparents would go over and they go over to their kid's house, and the kids basically get it from the grandparents, and then they'll hit their kids, we've told you about that. But then they don't do anything. So there's elders respect elders. The children of the old respect them, but the grandchildren respect nothing today.
I know, that part is a shame.
And it has nothing to do with race. It's just the grandchildren respect nothing. So, but you're going, like I said, it's just dangerous. I see what's going to happen because I'm old enough and I know enough.
It's not good.
It's not good. It's got to get worse. We happen to have a president that's what you want to. Okay, here's the historical thing about the history of the United States. Democrats start wars, Republicans end them. The war in Iraq was basically over when Obama came in, and basically, but what it is because Obama thinks that he is the greatest. Muslims worship him, that he can basically solve the problems by pulling all the troops back. No, as the more troops pull back, the bigger the problems are becoming.
And part of it is because they believe he's sympathetic to them.
Yeah.
They push further.
That's right. And you'd think that South Korea would exist today if we didn't have like 36,000 soldiers sitting between the North Koreans and South Koreans.
You have that many?
That's very little. We used to have like hundreds of thousands, but Obama keeps training them back. No, as soon as they feel that they've hit the magic moment of troops, the North Koreans are going to float across in the south. You'd think the Japanese would be nice. The Japanese people are not nice people. I mean, they're an imperial country. They still worship the emperor. If the emperor of Japan would say slice the throat of every American, you would have everyone my age slicing the throat of every American out there. That's how it works.
Yeah.
You'd think that if our troops weren't in Germany, the Russians wouldn't still be sitting in East Germany. That's the way it works. The reason why we have peace is because American troops are sitting everywhere. But everywhere American troops are pulling out, there's problems.
We're having problems.
Yep. And as more troops pull out, more problems. It reaches the thing right now is sort of like this, but when it's like that,
the tipping point.
The tipping point is going to be like sitting on top of a thing. When it swings, when they think it swings the other direction, all hell is going to break out. They're going to blow every single well in the Muslim world. Every well is going to be blown.
Well, I guess, some people's wishes will come true, and then the oil will go up.
Oh, God, yeah.
The oil will go up, and then those really green cars that nobody wants to drive.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to drive because their green is going to be so far out. What happens is we're going to have to hit our natural resources, which most people say are probably the greatest in the world.
And they're trying not to use them.
And yeah, we're not trying not to use them, but they say right now, we can, if the statistics are right, considering growth, that we can go another 30 years on our resources and not have to tap anybody else's. 30 years. In 30 years, times will change. You will
Yeah.
have green vehicles and green energy.
Yeah, by that time we would.
Because it's got to do. We're not really going too far for things. You can have green energy if you have infrastructure. It takes decades to build infrastructure, but until the infrastructure is there, you can't build the infrastructure on green energy. You have to build the infrastructure on non-green energy. And the green people can't. Basically, the green people have their idea of utopia is a time when there were no automobiles, there were no factories, and there weren't as many people. Geez, that sounds an awful lot like everybody else's idea of utopia.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the people that currently exist? You have to get rid of them. That's the only way you can go back to your utopia. So, I also had a person once, I had a teacher that basically thought was somewhat of a lunatic. He said, probably Atlantis existed. Probably everything that everybody has ever said existed. But war destroyed it. And they destroyed all relations that anything ever happened. And they said all those mutated animals that just popped up, well, probably nuclear war caused them. He said those great civilizations that people always talk about, they probably existed. Those visitations from outer space was probably somebody flying from one city to another city that still existed. He said all happens is that every so often everybody destroys everything and then the Earth starts all over again. And somewhere buried under hundreds of tons of, or maybe thousands of feet of material, there's a civilization there, there's a civilization there, there's a civilization there. Because remember, they'll tell you once the world was more water than it is, far more water than it is now. And at another time, it was far more land than it is now. So basically, water tends to hide a lot, and land tends to hide a lot. So.
Ooh, now since you have a lot of food for thought.
Yeah, but we're gonna keep on this until next time. This is OPM.
And this is not a spring chicken. We're here yesterday, today, and tomorrow for more information.
You can go to www.monkeybubble.net on the net.
And wherever you're watching us, subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, and thank you once again for over 40 million links on the internet.